Welcome to Live Interactive English. Hello everyone, I'm Mike.
And hi, I'm Rainbow.
And today we are going to begin a 2-day article all about the famous, the lost and found city of Troy.
You know what I know about Troy?
What do you know about Troy? The famous movie.
A really amazing movie.
It was a pretty good movie. Yeah, I bet you liked Brad Pitt looking very tough. Very healthy, long blonde hair, kind of shiny, oily skin as a Greek warrior.
All I remember. I don't even know what happened. It was just a beautiful girl, a warrior, and lots of battle.
And lots of handsome guys, too.
So handsome.
Right? Orlando Bloom, I believe, also played Paris, who was one of the sons of the king of Troy. Now, of course, we do know the movie. I'm sure they've made several movies, because this is one of the most famous stories in Western culture. They have old stories, but this is probably the oldest story. It was written as an epic poem by a writer named Homer. And he wrote 2 stories. Actually, there was the Iliad, which tells the story of the Battle of Troy, which was a battle between the Greek states and the kingdom of Troy. And then, of course, part 2 was the Odyssey. Yes.
Ulysses.
The story of Ulysses or Odysseus and his journey back home after the Battle of Troy was all over. So a lot of people might know some of the characters, right? Hector, Paris, Ajax, Achilles, Brad Pitt.
And the horse.
And of course, Helen of Troy, who started it all, and the horse, the Trojan horse.
The horse, yeah, that
which kind of ended the whole story, right? Exactly. But in terms of the reality, in terms of history, there were many questions. A long time, people thought maybe this is just a made-up place, right, in the story. But about 150 so years ago, approximately, they did actually find something that could be the city of Troy. And that's why we say it's the lost and found city of Troy. It's a very interesting, true story. Let's find out all about it.
Exciting.
Troy is one of the most famous names from ancient history. The city is widely known because it's where the legendary story of the Trojan War took place. But did Troy actually exist? The story of the Trojan War comes from ancient Greek epics like the Iliad. As the story goes, the war between the Greeks and Trojans started when Prince Paris of Troy took Helen, a beautiful Greek queen, back to Troy. This made the Greeks very angry, and they decided to go to war to get her back.
All right, so let's dive into this amazing myth or reality story. We begin the lost and found city of Troy, Part 1.
Yes, that is our title. So let's get into it. It says Troy is one of the most famous names from ancient history.
That's right.
Absolutely. When we talk about ancient history, especially in Western culture, we generally mean the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, people like that who sort of did a lot of the things that our modern world is based on. A lot of our language, writing, traditions, politics, a lot of that comes from ancient or classical history. And the city of Troy, the city is widely known because it's where the legendary story of the Trojan War took place. So Troy was the name of the city. Trojan would be the adjective, right? So the people who lived in Troy were Trojans. And we actually see these names all over the place. There's a city of Troy in New York State, the University of Southern California, USC. Their team are called the Trojans. So even today, we have very, very easy to find references to this story, which took place 3,000 years ago or so. But here's the question. We know the story is really old, but is it just a story? Or, as it asks in our article, but did Troy actually exist? Was it a real place?
And here we have the verb exist. Exist means something that is real in this earth. If we think about something that doesn't exist, maybe it's something we can't see with the human eye. For example, some people would say, does God exist? Do ghosts exist? Are they real or not? But when we talk about things that exist, that means they are for sure real in this earth, and we all know they are here. So a sentence for you, do you believe that ghosts exist? That also means, do you believe that ghosts are real? Are they really here? Or is it imagined? Okay, so let's get started with our story. First sentence says, the story of the Trojan War comes from ancient Greek epics like the Iliad. Like Mike mentioned, this is a very amazing story from a famous author that was long ago, and we often refer to it as an important part of literature. As the story goes, the war between the Greeks and Trojans started when Prince Paris, that is our main character, of Troy, took Helen, a beautiful Greek queen, back to Troy. So as you know with all wars, who is at the center? Of course, it's a woman. We see that in all cultures.
Exactly. I don't know if he took Helen back to Troy. It's kind of more like he kidnapped Helen and took her back to Troy. And of course, as the article says, this made the Greeks very angry. And imagine if someone went to England and kidnapped Princess Kate and took her away to another country. The people from her home country would be not happy or even very angry about that, and they decided to go to war to get her back. And that is the reason why we often say Helen was so beautiful. Her face was the face that launched 1,000 ships. 1,000 ships went off to war because of the beauty of this princess who was taken from Greece back to Troy. All right, well, that's a good beginning for a story and a good beginning for our article. So let's take a break and then we'll be back.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny。同学们有听过特洛伊木马屠城记吗？特洛伊是古代历史上其中一个最有名的名字。那这座城市广为人知，是因为它是传说故事特洛伊战争的发生地。可是特洛伊真的存在吗？特洛伊战争的故事，它其实是来自《伊利亚德》等等的那种古希腊史诗。那这个故事是这么说的：他说，这场希腊人和特洛伊人之间的战争，它的开始是起因于特洛伊王子 Paris 把美丽的希腊王后 Helen 带回特洛伊。那这让希腊人非常生气，他们决定开战。把它带回来。好，单字 exist 这个动词表示存在或是生存。那补充单字 legendary， 它是形容传说的、传奇的。它的名词 legend 就可以指传说故事或是传奇人物。再看到 epic， 它表示史诗。那 Rainbow 老师刚刚有提到 myth 这个字 myth， myth 则是指神话，它也有迷思的意思。那这边两个重点，我们进入文法时间。好，我们来看一下，第一个重点是 as 什么什么 goes， 是表达正如什么什么所说或者是据说，其中的 go 是用来带出要引述的内容，像是 as the story goes 可以表达如故事所言，据说。As the saying goes 可以表达俗话说、常言道等等的意思。例如 As the saying goes, nothing ventured, nothing gained. 俗话说不入虎穴焉得虎子。那其实这个字面上的意思是说，没有冒险就没有收获，它可以用来鼓励人要勇于尝试、勇于冒险。好，那第二个重点 go to war， 它表示开战、交战，后面可以接 over something 去表达因为什么什么而开战。例如 The two countries went to war over the disputed territory。那两国因为有争议的领土而开战。好，接回课文中。
The Trojan War lasted a decade. The Greeks tried many times to capture the city, but Troy's walls were extremely strong. In the end, the Greeks came up with a clever plan. They built a large wooden horse and hid soldiers inside it. The Trojans thought the wooden horse was a gift and brought it into their city. At night, the Greek soldiers came out of the horse and opened the gates. The Greek army entered Troy, destroyed the city, and won the war.
All right. right, so we already know that the beginning of the Trojan War, as it's told in Homer's story, the Iliad, began when Paris from Troy kidnapped away or took away Helen, and all of Greece united, all the different kingdoms of Greece united, and sent off their warriors to fight and bring Helen back. And that was the beginning of a war that was not over quickly.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it lasted a long time. The article says the Trojan War lasted a decade, which is 10 years. That's a long time.
That is twice as long as World War II.
It's very
That's
long.
a very long time.
The Greeks tried many times to capture the city, but Troy's walls were extremely strong.
Exactly right. So that's why it might have taken a decade for the war to end. A decade, as Rainbow mentioned, is just a 10-year period. We might make it nice and neat by saying, 1980 to 1989, the 80s is a decade, but it really could be any 10-year period.
Yeah.
If you live in Australia from 2014 to 2024, you could say, I lived in Australia for a decade. It's just a period of 10 years. For example, he has lived in this city for more than a decade. I could also say he has lived in this city for more than 10 years.
You have lived in this city for more than a decade.
I have. It's true. It's true. And we also had the word capture. It took them a decade to capture the city.
To capture, we can think of like catching something. So if I'm trying to capture an animal, I'm trying to catch it and keep it. But if it's a city, then I'm trying to seize the city or take over the city. Because remember, Troy was a very strong place and it was hard for people to enter into that place. So if I use a sentence that says, the army captured the town within a week, means I took hold of it, I ruled over it, I completely controlled it. So it took a long time because the city was so strong. It was, in fact, extremely strong.
That's right. Extremely large walls protected the city. When we say extremely, it's just an adverb that kind of means very, very.
Yeah,
to a high degree, to a large degree, much, much more than normal. I think it would be safe to say that it's not just very, it's more very, very. So it's one step beyond more to a lot more. For example, she is extremely good at learning new languages. If I heard that about someone, I might think that they could study Japanese for 3 months or so and maybe be good enough to travel there and speak with people. They're extremely smart when it comes to languages. All right, back to the article. In the end, after that decade, that 10 years, in the end, the Greeks came up with a clever plan, a very smart plan. They built a large wooden horse and hid soldiers inside it. They also kind of made all the rest of the army disappear. So the Trojans looked out, saw only this weird horse, no other soldiers around, so they thought the Greeks had gone home. The Trojans thought the wooden horse was a gift and brought it into their city. They believed that the gods were finally on their side, and in Troy they'd sent the Greeks home, and the gods had left this wonderful wooden horse as a gift. It wasn't really a gift.
This is a really, really good war tactic that we've talked about for later on so many hundreds and hundreds of years. At night, the Greek soldiers came out of the horse and opened the gates. The Greek army entered Troy, destroyed the city, and won the war. So the Trojan horse strategy.
That's exactly right. That's why we call something that sneaks into your computer a Trojan horse.
A virus. Yeah. To destroy means completely kill or ruin something. So if this place was totally destroyed, then nobody could live there. It was burned down, or the people were cast away, and it was like all in ruins. It couldn't be recovered anymore. That means destroyed. The fire destroyed the entire forest, burned down everything. All the animals lost their homes, and that place was ruined forever.
Yeah, exactly. In the same way that we would kill a living thing, we would destroy something that's not living. So that's exactly what happened. I think they actually killed all the people in the city and destroyed the city.
Yeah.
It was quite a scene. All right, guys, that's all the time we have for today. And you have a basic idea there of the story of the Battle of Troy, the story of the Iliad as it was told by Homer in his story from thousands of years ago. But I think for a long time, people thought this was kind of like a myth, a legend, a fairy tale, like many of the stories of the Greek gods. But there were a few people who were convinced there could be some truth in the story. There could be some real history. And that is what we will be learning about tomorrow. So come back and join us for that. It will prove to be just as interesting as the myth when we find out the reality. Check it out tomorrow. See you then. Bye-bye.
这一场希腊人和特洛伊人之间的战争持续了10年。那希腊人多次试图要攻占特洛伊城，但是它的城墙非常坚固。最后，希腊人想出一个聪明的计划，他们打造一匹巨大的木马，把士兵藏在里面。那特洛伊人以为木马是一份礼物，那就把它带回城里。那到了夜晚，希腊士兵从木马中出来，并且打开了城门。那希腊军队就可以进入特洛伊，摧毁这座城市，并且就赢得了战争。好 ，Rainbow 老师这时候有提到战术这个名词 tactic， tactic 就表示战术啊、策略或是手法。好，那么课文单字 decade 它表示10年 ，capture 这个动词则表示夺取，像是用武力去夺取啊、占领，它也有捕捉的意思。再看到 extremely 它表示极其非常，是个副词。再看到 destroy 它是指摧毁或是破坏，是个动词。那这边2个重点，我们进入文法时间。好，这边我们来看看第一个重点是 in the end， 表示最终、最后。这个副词片语就相当于 finally 或者是 eventually。例如 in the end, they gave up the idea. 最后，他们放弃了那个想法。好，那第二个重点是 come up with something， 就是表达想出、提出，像是提出某个想法啊、计划、解决方案等等。那这个片语必须以人当主词 ，come up with 加名词就跟 think of 加名词意思相同。例如 ，Bradley came up with a crazy plan。Bradley 想出一个疯狂的计划。好，那么以上节的讲解，同学别走开，马上回来哦。
Troy is one of the most famous names from ancient history. The city is widely known because it's where the legendary story of the Trojan War took place. But did Troy actually exist? The story of the Trojan War comes from ancient Greek epics like the Iliad. As the story goes, the war between the Greeks and Trojans started when Prince Paris of Troy took Helen, a beautiful Greek queen, back to Troy. This made the Greeks very angry, and they decided to go to war to get her back. The Trojan War lasted a decade. The Greeks tried many times to capture the city, but Troy's walls were extremely strong. In the end, the Greeks came up with a clever plan. They built a large wooden horse and hid soldiers inside it. The Trojans thought the wooden horse was a gift and brought it into their city. At night, the Greek soldiers came out of the horse and opened the gates. The Greek army entered Troy, destroyed the city, and won the war.
Shane!
Whoa, what's up?
What are you listening to? You seem really into it.
It's this new band that everybody is raving about. I'm definitely going to download their whole album.
Another new band? You just started listening to a new band last week. Don't tell me you're one of those sheeple.
Sheeple? Was that like a mythical, cool creature?
No. Sheeple is a term that describes people who follow trends blindly. You know, like sheep following a herd.
I just like to stay on top of what's popular. What's wrong with that? Anyway, you want to hear it? It's really good.
No.
Listen.
No! Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the word sheeple.
That's right, Winnie. Sheeple is a blend of sheep and people, and it's used to describe individuals who follow the majority without critical thinking.
It's often used to point out the behavior of people who are easily influenced by their peers or by popular opinion.
An example sentence could be, don't just buy that phone because everyone else does. Don't be like one of those sheeple.
Another example could be, everyone's dining at that new restaurant, but I don't want to be one of those sheeple.
Exactly. The term is often considered derogatory, as it implies a lack of individuality or autonomy in making decisions.
Right. While it's okay to be part of the crowd, it's also okay to stand out and think differently. Don't be like those sheeple, be yourself.
That's all for today. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.